Malia brought the Formula One. Why? Because he could. All right. He had to have the best or the biggest. That's Vijay. So when news came out that I was going to race the Chevron F2, there was my competition. The F1 arrived. We had 50 lap races in those days as a part of history that nobody will ever forget. My name is Vicky Chandok. I've been involved with the sport probably from the day I was born. I did my first race in 1972, racing an ambassador of all things in the old days. I currently function as the Vice President of the Madras Motorsports Club and sitting member of the Council of the Federation of Motorsports Clubs of India. So right behind the office, we had another small premises which later became the MMSC office, which was our late shop. Dad's car, the SEAC Special, which was built at South India Automotive Corporation, that's why it was called SEAC, was maintained right in our office. So behind in an open yard, it was built on a Jaguar chassis, and it was a special with single wheel nut and stuff like that, and spoked wheels, mechanical brakes. The damn thing would never stop, I'm sure. But I grew up exposed to that kind of atmosphere. I used to be also watching the Cholavaram races, going to the track all the time, seeing the likes of Mike Roff from Sri Lanka, seeing the likes of Kadhi's father, for example, Palliyappa Chettiar, Raja Vijayanagaram, the Maharaj Kumar of Gondal, not the one who raced against me, but who was senior to me, who was senior to the other Gondal. They were legends in their time, okay? People who were racing from all over India. And I grew up exposed to that. So as a kid, I think the first thing I probably did was just trying to tinker around, bending sheet metal to try and make specialized bodies to make it look like a racing car, and then sit with mud and paper at home and cardboard trying to make cars. So, you know, that was the kind of exposure, throwing junk away and making sure that you can try and salvage it later to convert it into a road car. So as a kid, this is the kind of exposure that I was brought up with. So people might say with a silver spoon, okay, but yes, I did grow up in that kind of atmosphere, and it encouraged me to take to the sport from all angles of it. I used to hang around the MMSC office, helping them distribute passes, or, you know, making dockets for the races, helping with competitors' documentation from when I was in school. So I learned how to flag marshal. That's the kind of stuff I kind of grew up with. I think involuntarily, I got into all aspects of motorsport from a very young age. When you arrive at Cholavaram, we would be looking forward to the weekend from our schooling and college days, like, hey, when's it happening? When's it happening? You know, like kids, like waiting for a new toy to arrive. The event of Cholavaram, I think, was looked forward to more. You know, we would get wound up saying, when are we going? Because mom would pack breakfast, okay, for not just dad who was racing or some other racers who were racing. We would stop at India Radiators on the way, because Mr. Chidambaram, the late Mr. Chidambaram, CT uncle, used to provide breakfast as well. So we looked forward to having breakfast there. Then going to Cholavaram because we'd had packed lunch, which was special, like going on a picnic. And then you'd get to meet all these people, all these racers who were coming there, different kinds of helmets, nothing looking the same, different kind of cars, people arriving in attires that probably I can't even comprehend today, but dressed in, you know, it became a social event to be at. But as kids, all right, what we looked forward was to go there and just see the noise, see the numbers. I mean, 350 bikes, 200 plus cars, okay, all prepared differently. We never had these large single type of vehicles looking like each other. Okay, yes, the saloons did, or the bikes did, but all the specials and the big cars were completely different in looks. And just the thrill of looking at it running up to the timekeeper's box. You know, we had 60 timekeepers, right? That used to sit with independent stopwatches, which I'll show you in a few minutes. But we used to sit with independent stopwatches. All the 60 timekeepers will be recording on a mechanical watch, right, the times of each car. We had lap recorders to cross-verify that as an audit system. So that was on the second floor of those Casuarina stands, which we used to charge up to get a better view. It was no entry to the, because you go and disturb them. But the challenge to try and squeeze in, you know, to the timekeeper's box to get a better view, because they had the best view of the house. It was a T-shaped track. So all that brings back memories. Then you go to the PWD guest house on the banks of the Cholavaram lake, okay, and then have like a budgies and steaming hot stuff coming out, and people having a general picnic. I mean, it's atmosphere that I don't think can ever be replicated. But as a kid, I mean, that's what we looked forward to. It was just like, when is it happening? When is it happening? And you know, you get up early morning, you're dressed, ready to go. You've got your kids on, so you can run around, and you're being given instructions. You can't go here, you can't go there. You've got your pass hanging around the neck. You're treasuring it like gold, making sure that you'll be allowed in, and then you stand in the queue to walk in. And yes, we had a separate queue for officials of the MMSC and things like that. But just to drive down that parking lot, it was a cross. There were two runways. So one part of the runway was where the parking lot for the public was. So when you arrive there and you start driving up to enter the Sancto Sanctorum, okay, called Cholavaram, and you see this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cars parked, and you see 35,000-40,000 people trying to pile in, then you know something special, you know. And funnily enough, the excitement never wore out. I think I was born in '57, so I probably made my first visit to the racetrack when I was a year old, because it was once a year. But till we last raced there in '89, I don't think the excitement of Cholavaram ever wore out. Okay, it was very special. It was almost, to put it mildly, I think it's probably embedded into anyone's memory who's raced at Cholavaram as a part of history that nobody will ever forget. Basically, I got my feet on the pedals of an ambassador, and the only primary reason was because that was the car of the family. My dad started rallying in a Triumph Mayflower, all right, in the 50s, and then he had the Standard 10 and he had the Standard Herald. But then when I grew up, by the time I was 15, I didn't have a license to drive on public roads, but I could race, so because it's a closed stadium. So we drove an ambassador. My mother drove and raced the same car. It was the only car we had. And I finished third. I was thrilled to bits. And when I first got into the car, it was like looking around Cholavaram, and I'm saying, whoa, you know, it's really a wide racetrack when you compare to anything that you see today. So just the enormity of such a wide track, the straight of 1.2 miles or 1.1 mile seemed endless. The barriers in between, you're always looking at seeing the officials. They used to stand in between rubber bladders and in between hay bales. Okay. The most probably fire hazard things you can think of today. But that's how we used to race. So when I got in and did the first lap, coming down to the first hairpin, I don't think I've experienced something like this I did before. Saying, oh, we've got to stop. We've got to get the damn car to stop. Okay, but you stand on the brakes. Okay, but suddenly you overshoot the corner. You do, because you're so enthused by seeing the top speed of the car. You're staring at the speedometer. Ooh, yeah, come on, 120, 130. You're just trying to fight the speedometer and seeing how fast you go, and you suddenly forget that you have to stop. Okay, and but we did well. We did reasonably well. Finished third, and I think it was P. Vijay Kumar from Coimbatore, not B, but P. Vijay Kumar from Coimbatore won that race. I think Kamlesh came second, and I finished third. It was also, I think, their debut years as well, were 1972. So all of us were like in the same boat, different age groups, and one was 15, one was 19, one was probably 22. But we had a grid of 18, 20 ambassadors. And in 1975, the Federation brought out a set of regulations for what's called the Formula Indian. The whole concept behind it, which was actually a concept brought out by Dad as well, along with Mr. Percy Gyara, and who used to work with Tata, based out of Pune and Bombay. So Percy and Dad conceptualized a two-seater car that you could also use on the road. So it should have headlights, indicators, so on and so forth. But it was never to be. It was never to be. So I got the first car built in 1975. The chassis was built by Adi Malgam in Bombay. Suresh Nayak was the other person. So there were two cars that made an appearance in 75. And it was so special to build the first car, to build the first Formula India, based on a Herald 948cc engine, independent rear end, so we had to make the drive shafts, because as you know, the Herald comes with a solid axle at the back. So we made all that, built the car in my own workshop, and we unveiled the car at the Raj Bhavan. And Governor K.K. Shah was the governor at that time. So Muthu Krishnan was the president of the club, J.N. Patel was the secretary, Anil Bhatia was the treasurer, and so we went up to Raj Bhavan, and K.K. Shah unveiled the car, and that was how special it was, building cars, and that kind of drove you on, that kind of gave you the push, because ours was all the days of hobby racing. Okay, professional racing has come in now, but it was all hobby racing. So 1975 to 1981, okay, or 1980, 81 I would say, we raced the Formula Indian. Okay, we started with the Herald engines, and then the rules changed to allow the Fiat engines as well, the 1100cc engines. So we spent 75, 76, 77, 3 years racing in Madras, racing in Juhu, Bombay. We raced at Agram, Bangalore. We raced at Safdarjung, Delhi, and in Barrackpur, Calcutta. So we raced the Formula India till 80-81. Then came the decision on what do I race next. So we went looking around. I said, let's start. You know, you've got to learn how to walk before you run. So I picked up a Formula Ford 1600, which was based on a Van Diemen. It was called Image. Made friends with a person called Alan Langridge. I went all the way to the Goodwood racing circuit. These guys were living out of a caravan. They were building cars there called Image race cars. And I remember the slogan. They had t-shirts saying, "Improve your image, be seen with me." You know, it was a catchy tone at that time. So I picked up an Image, flew it down in 82 for the races, shipped it back because, you know, we were running out of time. Then I said, I must get some support, must get some sponsorship. So I went to MRF because MRF was sponsoring the races. MRF was a big player already by that time. So I went to Ravi Maman, the late Ravi Maman, who was a very dear friend. So I walked into Ravi's room and said, look, I need some sponsorship. He said, what are you looking for? I said, just pay the freight for the car to come in and go, nothing else. So he said, what's the cost? Back in those days, it was 45,000 rupees one way. And return was about 18 or 20,000 by sea. So he said, listen, we've never sponsored anybody, or we've never sponsored any sportsman so far from MRF. Here's a check for 25,000. I want branding all over the car. Take it or leave it. So I said, okay, it sounded like a lot of money. So that was also, I think, the first association with sponsorship for me, right? And I was thrilled to bits. The car had MRF on both sides, and I raced that in 1982. And it was a great car. It was a great car. We still have the car. It's being rebuilt by Leela Krishnan. Hopefully he'll give it to me very shortly. Then in 83, so I raced that 1 year. We sent it back, 82, 83. Then I got married in 82. 81, 82 was the Formula Ford. 82, my wife and I were holidaying in Europe and England. And suddenly I said, let's go look at something special. Last around, my friend Alan Langridge, whoever built me the Formula Ford, and we said, let's fly to Scotland and look at this really stunning looking Formula 2 car. It was an ex-Elio De Angelis ICI paints car, proper Formula 2. I've never ever seen something so gorgeous in my life. So we flew up to Knockhill racetrack just to see the car, and I fell in love with it. Polished chrome wheels, the car looked unbelievable. Came on a trailer. It was owned by a person called Bill Lord. He arrived and he said, look, do you want to buy it? I said, sure. So we looked at the car, and he says, get in and drive it. 330 bhp. Monster. 2-liter engine. Brian Hart engine, fuel injected. I'm there in my kids and my jeans and a t-shirt saying, look, you must drive it if you want to buy it. I had no clue. I had no clue what the gears felt like. I didn't know what to expect out of it, but I get it. Because I tried to tell Alan, I said, you test it and I'll buy it. He says, no, if you're buying it, you will test it. This went on for about half an hour, then I got the guts to get in and drive it. Because Knockhill is not a circuit where you want to drive a big, fast car. It's a lot of undulations. It's in the middle of farmlands. So I get in and go around, and on my first lap, I get a tractor crossing the track. As it is, I'm nervous as hell. So we come, park down, take a deep breath for over 15-20 minutes, get over the shock of suddenly finding a tractor in the opposite direction, go out. Loved the car. I don't know whether I was in first, third, fourth, fifth. It didn't make any difference to me. But the car was just spectacular. And my wife remembers it till today. Says, well, we spent our honeymoon buying a racing car. So that is how it was. That is how it was. So I brought that down, which we raced from 1983 to 1989. It was a Chevron B42. It still exists, and it's got a place of pride in the MRF corporate office on the top floor. It's there. It still looks beautiful. Later converted it from F2 specs to Formula Atlantic spec. Because the regulations, Nazir Hussain that time was in charge, he built a 1600 special. Then decided that the rules must change and everyone must have 1600s. But that killed the sport. It killed having a Formula 1 car, because I was racing against Malia, who was driving a Formula 1. Gondal, who was racing a Formula 5000, Surtees. David Pierce, who was racing the Anglia Special. All these were big, huge monsters that public used to come to see. The minute you restricted it down to 1600, the big players didn't they said, oh, forget it. But we then converted ours, got a BDG block engine 1600, converted my 2-liter car to 1600 to follow Formula Atlantic specs, ran it till 1989, and then I parted company with MRF at that time and went on my own for the next 3 years with a car that's a replica of the Rolt RT4 that looked literally like an aircraft. It looked like a spacecraft. It was so ahead of its times. So ahead of its time. I got great sponsorship from Solidaire TV and from McDowell, and raced that for the next 3 years. Oh, it was great progression. It was a real upgrade from the Chevron. I think in the mid-90s was probably my last association with single-seater cars. But it was a long stint. It was a long stint of driving specials from 75 to 95 almost. 20 years, I think I did my bit. So, when the Chevron appeared on the track, Malia brought the Formula One. Why? Because he could. All right. He had to have the best or the biggest. That's Vijay. All right. He was racing here a long time before that. My dad, in fact, my dad knew him better than I did. Later we became great friends because Vijay used to come down as part of the Calcutta Motorsports Club team. He used to drive the Porsche. He used to drive Special. Also raced, in Calcutta, in Barrackpur, in the Porsche and things like that. So when news came out that I was going to race the Chevron F2, there was my competition. The F1 arrived. And I said, okay, this is what I've got to deal with. We had 50-lap races in those days. 50-lap long Grand Prix. And that car was built for smooth. You're in a Formula One car, is built to race on good tracks. Cholavaram was very bumpy. The concrete was broken and things like that. So to put the power down, Vijay's head would go, the whole car would just like that. But I was leading by over half a lap. Total lack of concentration on lap 49. The second left-hander, I'm looking, he's still coming down the straight. I was thrilled to bits, saying an F2 beating an F1. Yeah, it's special. Lack of concentration, I spun. And he beat us. Till today, he never lets me forget it. Whenever we meet, he says, Junior, you remember? I whacked you. Okay, all right. Okay. Luckily, the following weekend in Barrackpur, the roles were reversed. He spun out and I won. But the bond became very special. I mean, here we were a small-fledged team, nothing to look at. We had 30s, little straw partitions, mechanics working on the car from England and from my workshop. And then suddenly, the glamour would arrive. Vijay's car, his fleet of luxury cars and catering by Taj and trailers and hospitality buses and things like that. So I didn't know him well enough. My dad did. My father knew him exceedingly well. So, but then he used to use our workshop when they were racing in Madras. His cars used to be parked in our garage, which is where this building was put up later. So we developed a bond from back in 71, 72. All right, so I was 14 or 13. Vijay was 16. So we remain friends till today because we built such a strong bond up. It went on to become that I could lean on McDowell and the UB and Kingfisher later to support the Grand Prix. When I got involved into the administrative and into the construction of cars, and when the track was being built, when my father went to them, McDowell was the first one that gave us a check of 50 lakhs back in the 80s to build the racetrack. When Curry and I decided to build two-seaters, which were called the McDowell 1000. the Kingfisher branding on the cars was the first one to come on. Vijay supported it. The races used to be called the McDowell Grand Prix. Okay, so that bond developed, that he had such an affinity because his father died in 83, 84 when he was only 26 years old. The insurance companies and the management of all the companies where he was involved wouldn't permit him to race. But the love of the sport continued. Similarly, Curry and I were arch rivals on the track. We wouldn't give each other an inch. Okay? But finally in 87, 88, we sat around at Cholavaram drinking the rare beer. We always did that. We all got together, shared a beer at the end of it. Sitting outside the outskirts of the PWD guest house on the banks of the Cholavaram lake, we said there's just so few of us. Okay, and by then the 1600 regulations had come in, which wasn't making the racing amongst just a handful of us fun anymore. When it was the bigger cars, we had comparison, we could, it was getting exciting. But racing all identical 1600s was getting boring. We said, what can we do now to increase participation? It wasn't what can we do to make it exciting for us. We already had the best of hardware. We already had the best of opportunities. Then we came about on this idea to build a one-make car. Let's build a single-make car which everyone will have access to. Let's subsidize it and let's see how we can build. So we started with Fiat engines. We started with 118 NE engines because Curry felt those were available cheaply. Then 1985, Maruti launched their car in India. So we said, let's go with the Maruti. Went, sat outside Mr. Bhargava's room in 86, 87. Many of you will remember that the Maruti used to sell at a premium. It was selling at 55,000 rupees a car. The premium on it was almost the same. So we said, how do we get these? So I went up to Delhi, made a number of visits, sitting outside the chairman's office in Usha Kiran building, 19 Kasturba Gandhi Marg. I still remember the address, Maruti's office. And he said, what do you want? I said, sir, I need spares. I need parts. We'll buy them, okay, but we need them. If you give them free, good luck to us. So finally, I think, just to get rid of me, so he said, all right, what do you want? I said, I need 35 engines, gearboxes, 35 sets of mechanical components, this. I think he was so fed up of just seeing me there. He said, okay. He called somebody, asked me to liaise with them, gave us a price of 35,000 rupees per kit. And they supplied us 35 kits. So then Curry designed and built the cars. The Formula Maruti emerged in 1988, based on the 800. But what happened was it made racing more spectacular, it made it more professional because everything was identical. So everyone had the same hardware. But it took away the thrill of the big cars. It took away the thrill of that noise that you hear. It took away the thrill of seeing these cars going at speeds that you will never imagine in real life. The Maruti is restricted because it was an 800cc engine. So it was restricted to about 160 kilometers an hour, whatever. But that was the turn of single-seater racing in India. Okay, 88, 89 transformed single-seater racing, and it's grown from there since. We had such a beautiful launch function. My wife organized it at the Taj Coromandel in Madras. 29 Formula Marutis were parked in the ballroom. Okay, we had Wheels India who gave us free wheels. MRF gave us tires. Lucas TVS gave us alternators, starter motors, distributors free. Sachs gave us shock absorbers. Couple of other, there was a wiring company that gave us the wiring loom. So all these, we had displays of them. We had created a beautiful, or rather my wife had created a beautiful atmosphere, calling it pit stop and all this kind of thing. And we had, the first car was delivered, now I remember, the first car was delivered to Mr. N. Shankar, chairman of Chemplast. So we delivered the first car and we delivered all 28 cars to the sponsors and owners at that function at the Taj Coromandel. IAS Ramdas, who was the Secretary of Tamil Nadu, he passed away recently. But Ramdas was the chief guest. It brings back great memories actually. So we delivered all the cars on one single day, and they made their appearance at Cholavaram. Raced there 1 year before moving to MMRT.
Hey, before you watch the next clip, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Click the link.